Let me paint you a picture. You're walking through a crowded street, voices all around you, everybody's got something to say. You should do this. Why haven't you done that? Look at them, they're ahead of you. The noise is everywhere. It's loud, it's relentless, and if you're not careful, if you don't know who you are, you'll start to believe that the noise is the way. But here's the truth. The noise, that's just distraction dressed up like direction. You see, everybody's got an opinion on your life, on your pace, on your path, but not everybody's earned the right to guide you. Too many people living lives they don't understand, giving advice they don't follow, criticizing from the sidelines while you're on the field. And if you're not rooted in something deeper, if your focus isn't anchored from within, you'll drift. You'll chase trends, approval, validation, and still feel empty, because distraction always feels urgent, but it's never important. I learned that the hard way. I used to listen to everything and everyone. I thought if someone sounded confident, they must be right. I let their voices become louder than my own, and let me tell you something. The more you listen to noise, the more you forget your own rhythm. The more you chase their applause, the more you lose your peace. But when I stopped listening, when I got quiet, everything changed. When I blocked out the noise, I could finally hear my own thoughts again. I could feel my own instincts again, that inner compass, the one God gave you, that doesn't come from outside, that comes from stillness, that comes from silence, that comes from solitude. You can't find your direction in a crowd. You find it in the quiet room, behind a closed door, when no one's clapping for you and nobody's watching. That's where greatness is born, not in the spotlight, but in the shadows, where your focus is sharp, your soul is steady, and your vision is yours alone. So when the noise gets loud, and it will, you gotta ask yourself one question: is this moving me or distracting me? Because everything loud ain't leading you. Sometimes the loudest thing in the room is fear, and fear loves to talk, but purpose moves in silence. Purpose walks with quiet confidence. Purpose doesn't need to shout. It just is. Let them talk, let them shout, let them misunderstand you. Just don't let them move you. Your direction is yours, your focus is your power. Guard it like it's sacred, because it is, and trust me, it's better to walk alone in purpose than to run with a crowd going nowhere. Let me tell you something real. Everybody wants to be heard. Everybody wants to be seen, but not everybody's willing to become the kind of person who commands that respect without saying a word. See, there's a difference between talking about who you are and actually becoming that person. You ever walk into a room and feel somebody's presence before they even speak? I'm not talking about arrogance. I'm not talking about flashy or loud. I'm talking about quiet power. The kind of energy that comes from someone who knows who they are. That comes from self-mastery. Because when you've done the work, when you've disciplined your mind, sharpened your habits, learned to control your emotions instead of letting them control you, people feel that. It's in how you walk, how you breathe, how you listen. It's in the restraint you show when you could react but choose to stay calm. That's not weakness. That's strength refined. There was a time in my life where I thought I had to prove myself to everybody. I had to talk big, act tough, show off, make sure people knew I was doing something. But here's what I learned. When you really know yourself, when you really own yourself, you don't need to prove a damn thing. Because self-mastery isn't for the show. It's for survival. It's for peace. It's for knowing that no matter what storm is outside, you've built something steady inside. You see, anybody can talk when things are easy. Anybody can post motivational quotes. But what about when it's 5 a.m. and you don't feel like getting up? What about when nobody's watching and you have a choice to quit or to push forward? That's where mastery lies. In the quiet decisions, the ones no one claps for, the ones that stack up day after day until suddenly, you've become the kind of person people look up to. Not because of what you say, but because of who you are. And that's the thing, words fade, hype fades, but character, that stays, that walks into the room before you do, that speaks even when you're silent. You want to impress people, talk. You want to impact people. Transform. Discipline is a language. Focus is a language. Patience is a language. And if you master them, you don't have to raise your voice. You don't have to explain yourself. People will just know. Because the loudest thing about you should be your consistency, your work ethic, your integrity, your peace, not your mouth. The goal isn't to be known. The goal is to be undeniable, and that kind of power. It can't be faked. It has to be earned in silence, in solitude, through self-mastery. Let me tell you something most people never learn. Silence. That's not weakness. That's not fear. That's not emptiness. Silence, when used with purpose, is one of the most powerful weapons you will ever have. See, everybody's trying to be the loudest in the room, shouting to be heard, posting to be seen, defending themselves when they feel misunderstood. But the loudest voice isn't always the strongest one. Sometimes it's the most insecure, the real power. It's in the one who doesn't flinch, doesn't rush to explain, doesn't need to interrupt, doesn't let the noise pull them out of their peace. There's something sacred about a man, or a woman, who knows how to be silent and still stand tall. That kind of presence doesn't come from pretending. It comes from knowing who you are, knowing what you stand for. Knowing that not everything deserves your reaction, not every comment requires your energy, not every battle is worth your time. You know, I've been in rooms where people tried to test me, talk slick, push buttons, and everything in me wanted to respond, fire back, defend my name, prove I wasn't soft. But then I realized, that's exactly what they want. They want your reaction because your reaction gives them control. Silence, though, silence is discipline. It says, I don't owe you my peace. I don't owe you my presence. I don't owe you a single word that's going to take me off my path. Because silence isn't empty. It's full of strength, full of intention. You ever seen a lion hunt? It doesn't roar, it doesn't bark. It moves quietly, strategically, powerfully, and when it strikes, it's not for attention. It's for results. That's how you got a move. Stop announcing your every move. Stop arguing with people who don't understand your vision. Stop trying to convince people to see what only you were called to build. It's not your job to be loud. It's your job to be clear with yourself. When you know how to use silence, you create space. Space to observe. Space to listen. Space to think 3 moves ahead while everyone else is busy proving themselves in the moment. And the truth is, silence scares people because when you're silent, they can't read you. They don't know what you're thinking, what you're planning, what you're building, and that uncertainty, that's power. Let them guess, let them wonder, because while they're busy talking, you're mastering your timing, you're stacking your wins, you're preserving your energy, you're sharpening your edge, and when the time comes, when it's really time to speak, you won't need to raise your voice. You won't need to argue. You won't even need to explain. You'll just act. And your silence will echo louder than their noise ever could. Everybody wants the spotlight. Everybody wants the applause. Everybody wants to be seen. But the truth is, if you're chasing light without doing the work in the dark, the moment you step into it, you'll burn. Let me say it plain. The foundation of greatness is built when no one is watching. See, we've been sold this idea that success is supposed to be public, that every move you make should be broadcasted, documented, shared. But the real ones, the ones who last, they know better. You don't grow in the spotlight. You grow in the shadows. You grow in the quiet early mornings when it's just you and your grind. You grow in the late nights when your body is tired, but your purpose won't let you rest. You grow in the hours that don't get posted, in the sacrifices nobody claps for. I've seen it time and time again. People shine too fast, too soon. The world puts a spotlight on them, and it looks good for a moment. But they didn't do the deep work. They didn't build the roots. And when the pressure hits, when the expectations rise, when the applause fades, they crumble because all they had was image, no substance. All light, no weight. But when you work in the dark, when you show up when nobody tells you to, when you train when nobody's clapping, when you fail quietly, learn privately, and keep pushing with no audience, that's when you become dangerous, because now, when you finally step into the light, you're not faking it, you're not performing, you're not hoping people believe you're ready. You know you're ready because you built it. You bled for it, You earned it, and here's what's beautiful about working in the dark. There's no ego in there, no crowd to impress, just you and the truth, just you and the grind, just you and your purpose. That's where the confidence comes from. Not the claps, not the likes, not the reposts. The confidence comes from knowing what you've done when no one was looking. That's the difference. Anybody can look good under the lights for a little while. But if you didn't build it in the dark, you won't hold it in the heat. So stop worrying about being seen. Stop rushing to show them what you're doing. Stop needing validation for every small step. Let them wonder. Let them think you disappeared. Let them count you out. And while they do, you keep building, keep training, keep sharpening, because when it's time, when your light hits, they're not going to see someone who's trying. They're going to see someone who's become, and that moment, that's not luck, that's not hype. That's what happens when you do the work in the dark. You don't have to announce every chapter of your growth. You don't have to explain your evolution to people who only knew the older version of you. Growth is personal, it's quiet, it's sacred, and if you're doing it right, it won't always look flashy or feel comfortable. See, everybody's in a rush to show they've changed. Look at me now. Watch how I'm moving. But real evolution, real transformation, it doesn't ask for attention. It asks for alignment. It asks for sacrifice. It asks for you to sit with yourself and do the hard work no one else can do for you. You live, and you're gonna make mistakes. You're gonna fall short. You're gonna say the wrong thing, trust the wrong people, take the wrong turns. But that's part of the journey. That's part of becoming. You live through it. You learn from it. And if you're wise, you evolve quietly, strongly, with intention. Because what you learn in your low moments becomes the wisdom that shapes your high ones. And once you start really evolving, once you start seeing the patterns, breaking the cycles, removing the noise, something shifts in you. You no longer feel the need to prove your growth. You just embody it. You stop explaining your boundaries. You stop justifying your peace. You stop entertaining the conversations that don't feed your purpose. That's what it means to say less, not because you're hiding, not because you're passive, but because your silence now carries weight. You speak when it matters, you act when it counts, and the rest you let it pass. When I started growing, really growing, I lost some people. Not because I changed for the worse, but because I stopped performing for their comfort. I stopped shrinking myself to make them feel secure, and when I got quiet, I realized who was loud just to distract me from who I really was becoming. Sometimes people don't fear your failure. They fear your elevation. They fear what happens when you stop playing small. So they bait you to speak, to react, to stay in the version of you that they're used to. But the new you, the one that's living, learning, evolving, that version doesn't argue anymore. That version moves differently. That version walks in silence, works in silence, heals in silence, and that silence, it speaks louder than anything you could say. So no, you don't need to tell them you've grown. Let your presence show it. Let your consistency prove it. Let your peace reveal it. Because there's a certain strength in the person who's lived through the storm, learned from it, evolved beyond it, and now walks calmly, confidently, and says less. Let the world keep talking. You just keep rising. So now you've heard it. Focus only on yourself. Stay silent, not because you're running from the world, but because you're running toward the highest version of yourself. You don't owe the world your noise. You owe yourself your growth. You don't need to be seen at every step. You need to be steady with every step. Let them talk. Let them guess. Let them doubt. You just keep doing what few are willing to do. You stay disciplined in the dark. You sharpen in silence. You rise without announcement. You speak through action, and when your time comes, and it will come, you won't need to convince anybody. They'll know. They'll feel it. They'll see what silence built. Because in a world full of noise, confusion, and distraction, you chose to be different. You chose to be focused. You chose to be undeniable. So don't break. Don't fold. Don't speak too soon. Be still. Be strong. Be silent. And let your life make the loudest sound of all.